listening to The Bucket List.
Good morning. One of the Grand Tours starts tonight, Giro d'Italia, and we have Tom Reynolds, the General Manager of Marketing Communications for Cycling Australia.
For cycling fans everywhere, the classic season, the one-day racing, the cobblestones, the northern Belgium, the horrors are over, and now we move into the next version of cycling horror, which is the 3-week Grand Tours, with the Giro d'Italia being the kick-off. It's one of the 3 big Grand Tours of the year. Obviously, it's first, then we have the Tour de France in the middle of the European summer, and then the Vuelta a España, I'll get you to guess what country we're racing in there, is another 3-week tour that wraps up that season. There's 21 stages this year and a tick under 3,600 competitive kilometres, so it is not for the faint of heart.
You've got some fun facts for us, the distances and the calories that they burn. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The shortest stage is just the prologue, which is really the equivalent of, in footy, of running out through the banner. It's only 8 kilometres. It's a single individual time trial. It's really just a showcase to say, hi, everyone, we're off. And that's in Bologna this year, as I said, just 8 kilometres. But then we start to get into some serious Ks, 200, 220, 235. The biggest is around the 240-kilometre mark. And on those days, especially when they're uphill, the riders will burn anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 calories. And to put that in context, an average 75-kilo male would burn about 2,000 a day on an average sort of day. They need to eat 4 times more than you'd normally eat. Keep in mind, in the middle of that, they've got about 5 to 6 hours of cycling, and eating during that is quite tough. To give it to you in the simplest form, a 70-kilo male would need to eat 55 bananas a day to get that sort of calorific intake.
Wow. Do they drink more as well, water-wise?
Yeah, depending on the weather, but on average they'd need to have about a litre of water an hour, and that goes up as the effort goes up and the temperature goes up. It's a bit of a scary situation where they could drink 8 litres of water and not need a wee at the end of the day.
That's right. The Italians are desperate to get a home win. But who are the Aussies that we got to look out for on the Giro d'Italia?
There's lots of Aussies racing this year. The number one team isn't actually the Australian Mitchelton Scott team for number of Aussies competing, because whilst they've got 2, the Sunweb German-based team actually have 3 Australians. And the rider I'd like to highlight from there is Chris Hamilton, who's on his 3rd Grand Tour. So he's done 1 Giro and 1 Tour of Spain. He's from Bendigo, a 23-year-old, and a good start to the year. Gone cold a bit since then. Had a pretty poor classic season, but that's not really his thing. This is his future. And as a young 23-year-old cyclist in this discipline, the Grand Tour is really mature up to and after 30 years of age. So for him, a finish in the top 50 would be a good outcome. I really like Ben O'Connor. Now, he's an ex-runner who was a talent ID'd into cycling, and last year he was looking at a good top 10 position, but on stage 19 threw the whole thing off into the bushes and was unfortunately unable to finish. He's gone from a guy who you wanted to see do okay to a genuine top 10. I think we can place a bit more expectation on him, but another guy who's under 25. You know, really, we just want to see a good, steady progression in those younger riders. But the guy I really want to talk about is Caleb Ewan. This will be his 3rd start of the Giro d'Italia. He's already had a Tour of Spain. The critical thing is he's never finished any of those races. He's never done the 3 week. Now, he's got about 4,500 kilometres of racing in his legs this year. He's shown flashes of brilliance early, coming off a couple of wins in Turkey, but the DNFs will be playing on his mind, and whether or not he's ready or mature enough to have a crack at the Tour de France, which is one of the reasons he left Mitchelton Scott, was to get himself the opportunity to get a Le Tour start. This is where we need him to start stepping forward. Most of the Tour de France contenders won't be here because they've just realised now, even with a month off afterwards, it's not enough time to come back up. You know, we've talked about 8,000 calories a day for 3 weeks. It's a pretty hideous effort required.
Yeah, it is a spectacular event, a more picturesque event than the Tour de France and more favourable than the Tour de France, that's for sure.
We've only got 2 previous winners competing. It's a lot more open this year. A lot of purists actually think it's the best of the Grand Tours. You can't beat those Italian vistas, and no matter where they're racing, whether it's down the East Coast, West Coast, or up in the Alps, Italy always turns on the beautiful views. And my personal bet is Primoz Roglic. This guy has the most unusual background I think I've ever seen. He's a former ski jumper who competed professionally in Winter Olympic-type sports from 2000 up to 2011. Injured himself, used to do cycling in the off-season. I think we'll see an amazing result from him. 3 events this year, 3 wins, so he is red hot.
If there was one cycling event on your bucket list you'd love to go and see, what would it be?
Paris-Roubaix, the hell of the north. It's a 240-odd kilometre race from the north of Paris into Roubaix. 15 sections of cobblestones. The weather's always horrible. It rains, people fall off. It's the enjoyment of seeing others suffer, really.
Hell on earth. Absolutely spectacular. Tom, thanks for your time this morning, and hopefully your weekend will be full of cycling, and get ready for those late nights.
the real training for viewers is to get that afternoon nap in. Get that in, and then, maybe don't go to coffee too early, but just pace yourself because it's 3 weeks and, use those rest days wisely.
I agree with you there. That's the Giro Italia. Starts tonight. It's the prologue from Bologna. Get ready for 3 weeks of cycling. It's Tom Reynolds, the General Manager of Marketing Communications for Cycling Australia. Tom, thanks for everything this morning.
On the bucket list on SEN+.